How hard it must be actually choosing a football agent. Why MSMI?
Yeah.
And why Jason Mack? What makes you different?
There isn't an agency out there that works harder for their players than us. But every player, every family might want something different, might they, mate?
So Jace, following on from the last video,
Yeah.
I found it really interesting.
Good.
Come away with it, and it just left me thinking. So I've made a couple of questions for myself to
Cool.
ask you.
No problemo.
About like how hard it must be actually choosing a football agent.
Yeah.
Because you've got all these options. So yeah, I've made a couple of notes on my phone, a couple of questions. So the first question I've kind of got for you is why MSMI?
Yeah.
And why Jason Mack? What makes you different?
I think that in a hectic world, we bring calmness
Yeah.
to the table. I think in a world where it is very much a whirlwind from start to finish, that's exactly what you need. You know, I always say to my players is never get too high, never get too low.
Brilliant, love
so,
that.
Yeah, so for me, it's like, can you stay on a level with the person that you work
Yeah.
with and sort of have that calmness around you? So first of all, I'd like to think we bring that. Why do we bring that? Because we've been in the business a long time. Just through having a lot of involvement in the industry for the last 16 years, and then obviously having my father around who's been involved in the industry for 45 years,
Yeah.
is I'd like to think that calming presence is a real key. And then moving on from that, I think that there isn't an agency out there that works harder for their players than us, that has a player-centric focus towards them. And also, in terms of the levels of where the market goes to, there isn't anyone who's going to get better deals than us. So all in all, I think that puts us in good stead as to the why. But when it comes down to choice, it's very, very difficult. Very, very difficult.
A lot of agencies probably say the same thing as you.
Yeah.
Do you find that?
Yeah, all of us.
So like, what kind of makes you different? How can, if a parent was to come to you and say, they might say to you, I've heard this.
Yeah.
What would you then say that makes you different to them other agencies out there?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think, you know, one of the main things that we like to try and offer is we have better information than everyone else, number one. So the players that we're going after are 100% the elite level within the country.
Yeah.
So first of all, we are putting ourselves in a bracket where everyone is chasing the best. So it's extremely hard for them to make a decision. I think I would say at least 7 times out of 10 we're working on recommendations, so we've already done a good job previously.
Okay.
So again, does that bring calmness to the family to know that we've done a good job for other people around? I think yes.
Yep.
And then second of all, in a really difficult market, I'm going to say I'll fight for my player like I would my own child.
Yeah.
And I just don't think there's many people out there doing that who are actually out on the ground 24/7 doing the business like that. Does other people say that? Yes. But do we actually deliver?
Yeah.
Yes. So in terms of if it was your brother who was making a decision on an agent again, and I sat down with you and I said, look, you know, it's a really, really difficult decision to make. We don't force upon a situation. We always understand it's very, very difficult to the family. But if you could probably go to a player in the team, or whether it's someone from the football club and who have actually dealt with us and had good feedback, but also knowing that we 100% focus on the player. I think there's a lot of agencies out there that do a bit mixture of the two, so they work with football clubs as well as players. It's a red flag for me, because you want to make sure that you are 100% giving the right information to the family alone. That's becoming something that's even more difficult. And then ultimately you want to have that kind of family run situation around you, that you know that 24 hours within a day that phone call is going to be at least picked up within half a day, rather than obviously you have situations where people are too busy. Flip side of that, by the way, you also don't want to go with someone who's too accessible, because that's not a good thing. Because if they're around all the time, they're not doing anything else.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of finding that happy medium, and I'm putting it out there to the world that I know I can do the business, but we can't force upon a situation with a family. You just can't.
I think that's a great point on what you just said there about having someone too accessible and then having someone that's actually too busy.
Yes.
It's like you kind of need that in between.
100%.
Which is what you are. Because like you said, my brother, when he was trying to find an agent and stuff, I always thought, and the way I see it, even with just like life in general, if you choose someone who's got a load of people, are you then just a number?
I'm sure that's a question as to, you know, you obviously have large institutions out there, you have medium-sized agencies, you have bespoke agencies, and let's say we're all fighting for the same thing, which is elite. I think players over time decide what it is that they want. Sometimes players just want their contracts done.
Yeah.
And I completely understand that. And, you know, they might go with a specific agent for that specific scenario. You then have a situation where you're offering that whole situation, whether you have an arm as an agency, it could be your commercial side, it could be your legal side, or whatever. So what you need to do is you actually need to sit down with the families and show them what it is that you can do for that individual. One thing I'm noticing in the market at the moment is you've got a lot of coaching and analysis getting involved, and I completely understand why that's good, but that doesn't get you a deal.
No.
So it's great, don't get me wrong, and we have to provide that to a point, but then there's also that situation is that, what does that mean? You're going to go with a coaching agent, or are you going to go with someone who actually knows the business and have been there and done it? So can you find that medium? I think so. But when it comes down to choice, by the way, and there's a hell of a lot of choice. I mean, I know a situation last season where we chased a player that had over 75 different agents chase them. How'd you choose, man? Like, it's really difficult. You can't. So for me, it's like you need to narrow it down. Obviously, players are being approached young now, and there's good and bad as to the why that happens. Is because, you know, it's good because early you want to have the right advice, but it's bad because you're also having a lot of, you know, maybe, I don't know how to say it, but not very good level agents coming in to try and do the same job, and then you might miss being with a good agent, and then you have a big decision to make. You have the wrong agent to choose it. So I always say, like, definitely meet a few so you get to understand what different is, and then, but every player, every family might want something different, might they, mate?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's tough. It's really
tough, I bet. If I was to say to you, what are the benefits with being with a bespoke agency like yourself, or with a big institution?
For me, there's benefits of both, and there's no point me sitting here and saying one's better. It's just, again, I flip it and say what's right for the individual. So I will always go and sit in with a family and say, what is it that you want? Rather than what do you think that you want versus what I'm saying to you. You know, I could sit here and say that we offer lots of different arms to our agency, and we can help commercially, legally, with your contracts, with your family, you know, obviously stepping into your life and being involved in your family and that sort of thing. So obviously there's lots of pros and cons between the two, and you have huge institutions now that are very, very good at what they do. But for me, they have a massive focus on large transactions, which means that it takes them away from the bread and butter of looking after the individual. So that's just my opinion. And of course, there's good and bad within that. You've then got more of a player-centric focus on a bespoke agency that actually want to look after and take care of the situation from start to finish. And I think that what makes us different is it's me that focuses on the situation from start to finish. My opinion of other situations are, you know, you don't ever get to see the man at the top, or it's very, very rare. So when you sign with someone, how often would you see them within that 2-year period that you're going to decide to sign with them? But also sometimes that's okay as long as you're happy with the scenario that you live in. Whereas obviously for me, it's like when you're sitting down with a family and when you're going through in a really important time, whether that's signing a contract or, you know, it could be even I think something away from the football, like signing a boot deal or something like that. It's a really important time that you want to have that person to call that's involved in the transaction. And for me, I deal with the contracts, I deal with the clubs, and I also deal with the families, and I know exactly what's going on at any given time. I think that brings ease to a situation.
So if I was to say to you, what is it that MSMI excel at?
Again, so going back to the last video, I think that we're excelling not through choice, but just through where the market's going. So we're definitely excelling in the younger generation market. Why? Because it's just naturally happened over time. Again, if you'd have asked me 10 years ago, I would have 100%, my focus would have been on brokering deals and bringing players across from Europe to the UK. That has massively standed me in good stead for the job that I do now. So before, when I'm dealing with technical directors, CEOs, taking directors across to Europe, having a transfer from A to B, whether that be first team or youth transaction, That's the same, isn't it?
Yeah.
So why are we excelling in that market? Because we know exactly what we're going to do and we know where the levels of the market is. I've said levels of the market a few times. What does it mean? It means that we know exactly what type of club a player should go to. So what we'd want to do is sit down and go, okay, so which is the pathway here? Are you going to be number 3, 4, 5 in line? What's the realistic chance that you're going to get to the first team? You can't think about the first team manager at the moment because that's years away. So let's focus on the here and now. And then we've obviously got first team scenarios where we're having to take care of situations where what's the right choice? That could be geographics, couldn't it? You know, that player might have a young baby or whatever. So we try to think about every scenario known to man that our player's going to have to go through, which doesn't make it about us. So we look out and then we look in based on our players. But then when it comes down to the business decision, there's no one that knows the industry better than us.
What you've just said there actually leads on perfectly to my last question.
Okay.
Is so you are the longest running agency in the UK. Yeah. I didn't know this before today. Okay. So you learn something new every day. How does this unique position help you in your role?
I've been extremely lucky. I started this job when I was 19 and at that point my father was running a show. He'd been involved in the industry for over 45 years now, was the first agent in the UK. So for me, didn't realise how lucky I was to walk into a scenario where I could walk into a manager's office, CEO's office, and already gain the respect. So first of all, at 19, that puts you in a new, unique position, like you're talking about. And then obviously, naturally over time, there's probably not more people that have failed as much as me. And I mean that honestly, that now I'm in such a good position to be involved in this industry after 15 years of going through lots of situations where, you know, I didn't land players, I've landed players, I've landed the wrong players, I've landed the right players. I have made mistakes along the way in terms of having to go through a situation and not messing up situations, but it's a case of learning on the job. And I've been really lucky to do that, and I'd have never, ever, ever got that opportunity if I hadn't been involved, obviously, with my father, who's had the longest serving agency in the UK. And, you know, 4,000 transactions in probably over 15 countries is a massive thing that we definitely home in on, and we think that's impressive. And of course I'm going to focus on that because, you know, naturally you still have very much of the old school involved in the industry. So we're very much known in the industry at all levels of the game, and there isn't many agencies out there that have that. So that's a unique position that I definitely want to focus on because, you know, there isn't agents out there that have done transactions in Europe or Premier League, Championship, League One, League Two, National League, Conference North, Conference South. Whether you're using that as a loan market or a first team market, you know, you want to be with someone that's going to have done business in all different situations. And then obviously when you've asked me where we've excelled at, the reason is it's now like a new market. But I actually focused on this market as soon as Brexit hit within the youth market, which you're talking about. So for me, if you asked my old man to sit down here and talk to you about the youth market, he'd have no idea because it's a new market. So I see the game evolving ever frequently, but I 100% know better than him on that. And there's certain situations that he would know better. If he wanted to pick up the chairman of a certain football club, you know, it would be an easier conversation for him than it is me because he's an older generation person versus the new school. So, you know, it's like out with the old, in with the new, eh, mate?
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, thanks very much for watching the video. Again, if you've got any more questions, please reach out. And yeah, back again with Max Sports Management International, and we'll see you again very soon.